organization, you have certain procedure. So that is a procedure you have to follow. Every year it is the same, more or less. Okay. So as I said, objectives. One example for the objective, simple example is like I told you about the. Suppose you want to learn the C programming, you set the objectives. Okay. If you open the syllabus, there are objectives defined, and to meet that objectives, we include certain syllabus. So when we teach that, this is the plan. Syllabus is, you can think like it is a plan. When we execute this plan, first we will talk about the basic structure of the programming, then all the different types of data types, variable things like that, then control statements, then functions, arrays. So everything will be, that is a syllabus. So all this together, when we teach that, it will meet the objective. The objective would be set like the first objective is understanding of the programming first, because it's for the first year when we are introducing the programming. First, everybody should understand what is the programming. Objective is understanding the programming concepts. Second objective, understanding different types of data types, okay, and their usage, how to use that. Third one is using different kinds of control statements, using for loops. So objective would be student would be able to write a small program implementing the for loops, and similarly student should be able to write a small programs using the conditional statements. So exactly similar to that, uh, when we want to achieve something, we will have the objectives. So all the objectives are defined, which will meet our organization needs. So objectives are goals or aims that the management wishes the organization to achieve in pursuit of its mission. Okay. So these are the goals that you are selecting. We will see the characteristic of the objectives also. Objectives should be measurable, right? It should not be just vague. Okay. And all the objectives cannot be measured. We will see those kind examples also. These are the endpoints or pole star towards which all business activities like organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling are directed. So these are the like endpoints. All the activities, you talk about all the activities of the management, it is directed towards meeting the objectives. Whatever we do to meet the objective. For example, we are teaching so many subjects. We are meeting certain objectives in certain subjects, and these all the objectives together, it will meet the requirement of a computer science and engineering student, okay, which will meet the industry standards. So that is how the objectives will go, like they will contribute to the overall mission. That is, the overall mission is what? To produce a good software computer science engineers. That is the mission. And using all these objectives, we meet that particular um, uh, we achieve that particular mission statement. Only after having defined these endpoints can the manager determine the kind of organization, the kind of personnel, and their qualifications, and kind of motivations, supervision, and direction, and the kind of control techniques which he must employ to reach these points. So once we have the objectives defined very clearly, then only the manager will be able to move in a certain direction, how to motivate them, how to recruit, what kind of a qualification is required, what kind of a supervision, what kind of a direction, what kind of a control techniques that will be used. It will be decided based on the how the objectives are defined. For example, if the which says objective is like a student should be able to write a small program using the for loop. So then a hands-on, right? Lab is required. So these are the different tools you are bringing in. If it says student should be knowledgeable about the for loops, so it doesn't talk about the program. So if we explain how the for loop works, then the work is done. We achieve what the objective is set. So but if the objective is set as student should be able to write a program means it's a hands-on, lab is required. So based on the objective, we will have different kinds of operations that will meet the objective. In the industry also, it is exactly the same. The way we set the objective, based on that, the management will use different technique to meet those objectives. Objectives should be distinguished from the word purpose. Okay. The purpose of an organization is its primary role defined by the society in which it operates. So there is a difference between the purpose and the objectives. Purpose are very generic, right? The purpose of this college is to produce good students. That is very generic students. Sorry, that is a very generic statement. That statement really doesn't tell. Suppose if I say like computer science department should produce the best computer science engineers, that is the purpose. Okay. uh, if you want to achieve that, you have to create the objectives. Objectives are like very specific what we want to do. So here example is given. For example, the purpose of every university is to impart education, or the purpose of every hospital is to provide healthcare. University has to provide education, and the hospital has to provide the healthcare. Those are the purposes of those institutions. Purpose is therefore broad aim that applies not only to the organization but to organization of its type in that society. So it's a purpose is a broader idea. It is not very specific. Objectives are the specific targets to be reached by an organization. If the purpose is to provide a healthcare, objective will tell how that healthcare will be given. It will be very specific. They are the translation of organization's mission into concrete terms against which results can be measured. So here important is what the objectives are created in such a way that by achieving those objectives, overall achievement will achieve the mission. And also each of those objectives what we have is measurable, whether we met the objective or we didn't meet the objective. It is very it is measurable. Same example, if you go, a student has to should be able to write a program using for loop. So we will train it. How we can measure? So we can give a very small program to all the students, and we can measure whether we achieved that object or to what extent we achieved. So it is measurable. For example, a university may decide to admit a certain number of students, or a hospital may decide to admit certain number of indoor patients. So these are the objective. Example, one is like it says certain number of students. So it want to admit certain number of students. So the objective is that. So for every year we will train 100 students in this particular area. That's the objective. You can measure it. 100 students taking the knowledge and coming graduating, so that is a measurable thing. Similarly, hospital will decide the number of how many number of indoor patients they want to have. It is regarded organizations as a coalitions of a large number of stakeholders with widely varying stakes. So we know that whenever we have an organization, there are a lot of stakeholders. And I told you who is the stakeholder. Stakeholder is the one who has a direct or indirect in that particular organization. So for example, who are the stakeholder of our college? First, primary stakeholders are students, teachers, okay, then all the supporting administration, management, parents, okay, and also university, which is a indirect. Okay, there are a lot of indirect. These some are the direct stakeholders, some are the indirect stakeholders. And industry, industry is also a stakeholder because they are going to recruit you from this institution. They are indirect stakeholders. Those are the stakeholders. An organization's objective take into account all stakes and specify a common viewpoint acceptable to all the stakeholders. So when we are creating the objectives, we take care of all the stakeholders, their interest, and we come up with a common viewpoint which will be acceptable to most of the stakeholders. This implies that no organization can adopt objectives unilaterally without considering what others want. So when we are creating the objectives, it is not unilateral, means it is not only from one side. it will be based on the inputs from the all the stakeholders. So these are the characteristics I talked about. How the objectives, what are the characteristics the objectives should have. uh, Objectives are multiple in number. So objectives, there will not be just one single objective. There will be set of objectives. Collectively it will meet the mission, or collectively it will meet the what you the organization wants to achieve. Objectives are either tangible or intangible. So here, I told objective should be measurable. Tangible is what? Measurable, right? Intangible is tangible is more like you can quantify it, okay? And intangible, you cannot quantify. Example of a tangible, one example was like particular university wants to admit 100 students, so it is that objective is 100. Or another example is certain organization, it has a set of objective to increase the sales by at least 20%. That is the objective. There is a number, and at the end of that year we can measure whether the sales was increased by 20% or not. Those are the tangible objectives. And certain are intangible. We cannot really measure those intangible. We cannot quantify. For example, customer satisfaction. One of the objective is like we want to have a increased customer satisfaction. So increased customer satisfaction, it is very difficult to measure, right? We cannot quantify it. Okay, we can assess, but we cannot put like a number for the satisfaction. So such there could be objectives which we can measure, we can quantify, and there are certain objectives which cannot be quantified, okay, but they are required. Objectives have priority. Definitely, when we are having a set of objectives, definitely we will have a priority for them. There are objectives with the highest priority, and there will be objectives with a lowest priority, and objectives are met according to their priority. So highest priority objectives goes first, and the lower priorities goes later. There will be a definitely a priority. Objectives are generally arranged in a hierarchy. So when you are trying to achieve the goals, there is a logical sequence, like hierarchy will be there, how you are wants to achieve that particular, suppose there is a target, okay, for an organization to increase its market share. So that is a whole idea what they want to do. When they break down, so they will break down in such a way that the highest thing that has to be, or the high priority things that should be done, will go first, and there will be hierarchy in which that particular task is met. Objectives sometimes clash with each other, so there could be chances one objective might clash with other, means there might be a conflict in the what one objective says and the what other objective says. Okay, and what are the requirement of sound objective? Sound objective is like if you want to have a very good objectives, then what are the requirement? Objectives must be both clear and acceptable. Okay, first requirement is it should be very clear what objective. When I told students should be able to write a program using simple program using for loop, this is very clear. If there is no ambiguity here, and acceptable is basically this particular statement doesn't hold good for acceptable when we have a lot of stakeholders. Okay, if I put a statement like a student should be able to write a very complex program using a for loop, that will go through a discussion, because when it was exposed, okay, when students are exposed to programming, seeing the constraint of one semester and other things, whether we should go for that. So that whether it is acceptable or not acceptable is a question. So objectives should be very clear, and also it should be acceptable by all the stakeholders. Our objectives must support one another. This is most important thing, because objectives collectively they meet the mission, so they should support one another. The way the objectives should be written, it should complement the other. So by achieving this objectives will be also able to meet very easily. So objectives should be in supportive nature. Objectives must be precise and measurable. uh, Objectives are should be precise, very precise, and it should be quantifiable, it should be measurable. So for example, customer satisfaction, even though it is intangible, we can put it in a tangible thing. Let us say you say customer satisfaction. If you do a survey, at least 80% of the customers should give a positive. Okay, if customers are asked with the choices about a product, very good, good, and average, not good. So you can set a range for all of that. That is how you can make it as a measurable. Objective should always remain valid. So this is most important thing. As the situation changes, there is a situation where the objectives become invalid. For example, as we know in IT industry, the technology keeps on changing. We are going towards a newer and newer technology. Suppose if the university has included a particular subject which is outdated, or it is like already changed, there are newer technology. So now it, in current situation, that particular objective seems to be invalid, that particular subject seems to be invalid. So we have to make sure that the objectives are always valid. Okay, as long as objectives are valid, it should be there. The minute it becomes invalid, it should be removed from the list of the objectives. Advantages of objectives. What is the advantage by having the objectives? Basically, following benefits results from the objectives. So we are talking about objectives here. When you are doing certain work, you should always put the objectives. You should write the objective, why you are doing that. Suppose I asked you to learn about the aptitude test and go through the C programming, and you should set the objectives. And what is the objectives? You have to break it down, the way I told you. Let's say reasoning. Reasoning is the one. Then verbal things, verbal communications, or all these things. You should be able to say like you have to set an objective in reasoning type of question. At least I should score 90%. So you go through the practice and take mock tests. Okay, you should be able to score at least 90%. That is your objectives. So in C programming, you are learning something, you put objectives there. Oh, you need not have like hundreds of objectives, very few objectives. For like C program, 5 to 6 objectives. uh, and you should be able to meet after going through all the training. Everything that you do, it should have a objective. And we say the purpose. When we are doing something, we should do it for the certain purpose is a larger term. You are breaking down into objectives. So that will why that is important is when you go through certain activity. Let's say you spend 3 months in learning C programming. At the end of the C programming, at the end of the 3 month, you can check whether you met the objectives, how much percentage you have met, or if you didn't meet. If you didn't meet, you should go back and that particular objective, to meet that objective, what you need to do, you should check and you should do it. So at the end, all the objectives should be met. Then we say that particular work or that particular training is successful. First thing, they provide a basis for planning and for developing other type of plans, such as policies, budgets, and procedure. The first thing is what? Objectives provide the basis, means it is the first platform where my planning starts. without knowing what I want to do. Objectives, like you can put it like what organization want to do or what organization wants to become. That is the objectives. Once you have the objectives ready, then it becomes very easy to work on the plans to how to meet those objectives. And examples of plans is like policies. For example, I told about the hiring policy, right? Hiring policy, they will have set of rules. First is they will do screening, then what kind of a percentage they are looking, what kind of engineers they are looking. All those go under the policies. Okay? Policies, budgets, okay, budgets and procedures. They act as a motivators for individuals and departments of an enterprise, imbuing their activities with a sense of purpose. When objectives are set, each and everybody in the organization, okay, whether it's an individual or the departments, they know what are the objectives towards which they are working. So they will be motivated by those things. They eliminate haphazard action which may result in undesirable consequences. So they will eliminate any situation which will have a conflicting, because objectives are very clear. We saw the characteristics based on which the objectives are done. Objectives are very clear, very precise, and everybody knows what needs to be done. So consequences of having a difference of opinion is less. They facilitate coordinated behavior of various groups which otherwise may pull in different direction. So if there are different groups, okay, or departments in the organization, they will know how to coordinate with each other based on the objectives. They function on basis of basis for managerial control by serving as a standards against which actual performance can be measured. So they will act like a standards. Okay, once you have the objectives, managers are very clear. He knows the objectives, and according to that, he will put the control measures. Okay, whether things are going in the right direction according to objectives or not, he can put in the right kind of controls. They facilitate better management of enterprise by providing basis for leading, guiding, directing, and controlling the activities people of various departments. See, objective is the basis for everything, whether it is a leading, directing, guiding, because on the principles of the objectives only all the activities will go on. They lessen misunderstanding and conflict and facilitate communication among people by minimizing jurisdictional disputes. So everybody knows when they are meeting certain objectives, what are their boundaries. So chances of the conflicts are very less. When objectives are vague, means it is not very clear, that time there is a possibility it will create a lot of communication issues, lot of dispute, because the objective itself is vague. As long as objectives are very clear, very precise, well thought of, there is a very less chance of having a conflict. They provide legitimacy to organizations activities. Okay, the first term is like we have the objectives. Next is the strategies. Once we have the objectives, to meet those objectives, we will have the strategies. Strategy is a term originated in military which connotes a response to a competitive environment. So strategy is a like a it's a kind of a it's not exactly a plan. A strategy is the direction how you want to move in. Okay, and strategies are done by the management with with the complete knowledge of the objectives. What are the objectives that are set for the organization? Based on the objectives, the strategies are set. For here example, we want to produce the best students in Karnataka. With that kind of a objective, we will bring in the strategy, how to train, which area to look into. So all those strategies is driven by the objectives. In a competitive situation, it is not enough to build plans logically from goals unless the plans take into account the environmental opportunities and threats and the organizational strengths and the weaknesses. So we talked about this, just I told you about the word SWOT. So we just cannot prepare a plan. So this is the goal and I will prepare the plan. It doesn't happen like that. We have to consider the environmental factors. Okay, so what are the opportunities that are available, and what are the threats that persist, and this is from with respect from the environment. So environment gives me opportunities, and environment creates threats for me. Right now, uh, the environment, okay, if you consider the COVID situation, that is the environment. It has created the opportunities, also it has created the threats. Based on your positioning, how, what work you want to do, you can perceive it as an opportunity or you can perceive it as a threat. For example, I told as a student it's a great opportunity, okay, less of a threat. It is more of a opportunity for you, where you can use it for learning and equipping yourself for the future. And for example, certain kind of a businesses, okay, for basically this situation, the threat is like communication, close contact with the people. So what kind of business will be under threat? Like a restaurants, okay. So restaurant, it's a big threat for the restaurants. The restaurants are closed. So you have to, when you are planning, it is not only the what you want to do, it is also what the environment, what opportunities and what threat it will give. And that is a one part. Environment is a one part. Second part is the organization. What are the strengths that we have, what are the weaknesses we have, okay, based on all this. So that's why it is called as a SWOT. Okay, this is commonly referred to as uh, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat analysis. So we have to do that. Every organization does it. They understand what are the opportunities are available, what are the threats, okay, what are the strengths, and what are the weakness. And I told you this is not. I told you this is used for analysis purpose. You can solve complex problems. You can use it for the planning purpose. It can work as a individual for not only organization and teams, for individual as a human being. Suppose I want to become certain thing, okay, let us say I want to become a .NET developer, okay, that is my goal. So you have to do the SWOT analysis. Okay, what are your strengths? Okay, are you working on .NET? Are you learning? Okay, how you are yeah, uh, how you are with the coding, like have you participated in any competitions? All those things are comes as a strength. Weaknesses, weaknesses is like you are not able to spend that much time, okay, things like that. Those are the things you will put in the weaknesses. What are the opportunities? Opportunities, there are a lot of job requirement in the .NET area. That is a huge opportunity. Like one is like job offers better lifestyle, things like that. Those will go in the opportunities. And the threats, what are the threats? May threats is like you don't have consistent network connection, internet, or there are you are not able to learn some of the things. You can put as a threats. Once you have, this is a quadrilateral. Once you have strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and threats. Strength, how you should work on the strength is you should try to enhance the strength. Okay, you should use your strengths to the fullest extent, okay, to make the things successful. You have to use the strengths, because those are your strengths on which you can count upon. And second one is the weaknesses. When you have weaknesses, you should work on the weaknesses, and you should try to eliminate those weaknesses. For example, weakness is communication skill, okay. You have to work on the communication skill, and you have to move the weakness, whatever the points on the weakness, you should try to move them from the weakness quadrant to a strength quadrant, okay. Or at least you should have some plan to negate that weaknesses, okay, to at least make it as a not impacting your main goal. Third one is the opportunities. We should exploit the opportunities. Whenever environment gives us an opportunity, we should exploit it to the maximum extent to achieve our goals. And for the threats, what to do, what we should do with the threats? Threats, you have to make a mitigation plan. There are certain threats which you can control, and there are certain threats which you cannot control. For, let's say, government policy, you cannot control government policy. You should have a mitigation plan. Suppose this thing happens, I'm going to take, these are the steps that I'm going to take. For threats, you will always have the mitigation plan. A corporate strategy is a plan that takes these factors into account and provides an optimal match between the firm and the environment. So it will take into consideration all these factors we talked about, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat, and it will come up with an optimal match between the firm and the environment. Two important activities involved in the strategy formulation are environmental appraisal and corporate appraisal. When we say environmental appraisal, it is basically outside the organization, so it is coming from the environment. And the second one is within the organization. Corporate appraisal is within the organization. Environmental appraisal, an analysis of the relevant information, relevant environment results in the identification of threats and the opportunities. So you will perform the analysis of the environment, and you will identify what are the threats and what are the opportunities. Some key environment factors which need to be studied are given below. So as an environment, we need to understand what are the threats and opportunities. How do we look at it is put into certain areas? Political and legal factors. So what are the opportunities and threats in the area of political and legal factor? Stability of the government and its political philosophy. So this is the main, very, very important thing. How the government is, whether it is stable, okay, and what is their political philosophy is, like how their plans and what is their ideology. That plays an important role. When governments are stable, people will be more interested in investment, right? That is a one. Taxation and industrial licensing laws. So how the taxation is done, how the industrial licensing is done, it will have a huge impact. So normally, if you see, like when government they want to increase the investment, they will come up with a lot of tax relaxation and other they will ease the licensing policies, things like that. So that is also an important factor to be looked in the environment. Monetary and fiscal policies. What are the monetary and fiscal policies that are followed? Restriction on capital movement, repatriation of the capital, state trading, etc. So how the if government imposes any restriction on the capital movement, okay, so that is, the capital is like in simple term, you can say like it is the total money that you have capital. Okay, how easily we can move around different organization. Repatriation of the capital. Repatriation is like bringing money back to the original where the country is. Like when you are getting the money from back from where you have worked. Let's say a certain organization has their industry in other countries, and how they can bring back the money, that is a repatriation. So all those are important when they are seeing it as a political and legal factors. Second one is the economic factors. Level of economic development and distribution of the personal income. So to study what is the level of economic development and how the wealth is distributed. Trend in prices, exchange rate, balance of payments, etc. So these also play a vital role. Supply of labor, raw material, and capital, very important. This is the environment. Why IT sector is booming in Bangalore? So there is a the resources. Okay, supply of labor is very high, right? And that is the reason. Raw material. So you will see the certain industry very close to the where the raw material is available. So those are the part of the economic factors. So all these economic, whatever the factors we are looking, there are opportunities as well as threats. So what we are doing here is we are trying to identify what are the opportunities and what are the threats in these different sectors. Competitive factors, identification of principal competitor. Okay, so organization has to identify who is the competitor, analysis of their performance and programs of major area such as market penetration, product lifecycle, product mix, distribution channels, and sales organization, servicing, credit and delivery, advertising. So this is about like a competition. When you are talking about the competition, let us say the Apple and Samsung. So the best example of the competitor. Apple, when they are doing all this analysis, they will analyze the Samsung with respect to all the what is their product mix. Okay, what is the product life cycle? What kind of technological development they are making? How efficient is their manufacturing? How they are managing their finance? Things like that. They study about that. So next is anti-monopoly laws and the rules of competition. This is like anti-monopolies. Monopoly is like you are the only player in that particular area. When there is a monopoly, there will be a certain laws which will avoid that. So you have to be aware of that laws. Protection of patents, trademarks, brand names, and other industrial property rights. So this is a very important aspect. How the patents are protected, trademarks are protected, brand names are protected. Okay, based on the government policies. Okay, this plays a very important factor. Next, the last one is the social and the cultural factors. Literacy levels of a population. What is the literacy level? See this literacy level can, why we are checking this? It can give us some kind of opportunities, or there can be some kind of a threats. Religious and social characteristics. Same thing goes here. Extent and rate of urbanization. So how much urbanization has happened and at what rate the urbanization is happening. Rate of social change. So rate of how much is the social change. So they take into all this into consideration to identify the opportunities and the threats. Next is a corporate appraisal. uh, what we saw was the environment appraisal. Next is a corporate appraisal. Corporate appraisal is within the organization. We are trying to find what are our strengths and weaknesses. This involves analysis of company's strengths and the weaknesses. The company's strengths may lie in outstanding leadership, excellent product design, low cost manufacturing skill, efficient distribution, efficient customer service. There are so many areas. So you need to identify which areas you are strong at. Okay, whether you are strong in the design, efficient distribution, efficient customer service. Okay, I talked about the logistics. Okay, Asian Paints. So their whole the biggest strength is their logistics. They can reach out. I talked about that example. They can reach out to so many retailers 3 times a day. So that is unimaginable. That is the greatest strength. No competitor can have that. So you have to work on your strength. Asian Paints is heavily investing on their strength, because their strength is logistics. They the competitors are unable to reach to that level. Any of these strengths that represent unique skills or resources that can determine the company's competitive edge, or are called as a core competency. So that is how you become the whatever the strengths you have, that becomes your core competency. For if you take an example of an individual, you are a .NET developer, very good .NET developer. So your core competency is a .NET. Okay, you can program on .NET. Suppose somebody is Java J2EE, his core competency is Java J2EE, and let's say somebody is into networking. Okay, his core competency is networking. So you have to work on your core strengths which you are interested in. The company must plan to exploit this strength to the maximum. So suppose you are a .NET developer, you should focus on utilizing this strength. So using this strength, you can place yourself, or you, if you want to start up your company, you can use the .NET to build the products. So you should work on the strength, whatever the strengths you have, to the maximum. Similarly, it may suffer from number of weaknesses, which it must try to circumvent. So, whenever you have weaknesses, you have to identify strength as well as weaknesses. And when we are doing it on the individual terms, most of the time we focus on the weaknesses. We don't focus on the strengths. So, when you are doing a SWOT analysis, let us say you do the SWOT analysis for yourself. Uh, if I ask you a question, what are your weaknesses, you come up with a big list. Okay, there is a big list. You will write, you will say, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this. Okay, but when I ask you the strength, you will be thinking, because humans, as a human, we are more focused on the weaknesses rather than the strength. So you have to think, what are your strengths? If you want to know your strength, ask your parents. Okay, if you want to know your strength, ask your best friends, they will tell you about the strength. So work on strengths, list down the strengths, also list down the weakness. So rest of the things will continue in the next session. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat section.